Welcome back to the War Room, my beautiful people. I am your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin, and I'm here with my fight family, Malissa Smith. She is a women's boxing historian, and Mr. Eddie Goldman. We call him the conscious of combat sports. We are going to kick it off right to you, Melissa, to talk about women's boxing and not this weekend's Day of Reckoning. We're going to get to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about Shadeja Green losing to Franchon Cruz because pre-show, I think I said I just knew Shadeja was gonna win that fight, and you were like, "Oh no, I had Franchon winning that." Now tell me why you thought Franchon was gonna win seamlessly. I mean, she scored. She didn't score a knockdown, but she won on points. Correct?
She won on points. She won clean and absolutely, there was not a zero hint of discrepancy with
What?
her winning the fight. Not at
It,
all. I mean, you may have said, okay, one of the scores, she won by UD 97-93 by two judges, 98-92 by one. The 98-92, okay, that was a little bit of a gift, but not the win and not
wow.
unanimous decision
What
at
happened?
all. Okay, so
Shadeja,
y'all
what
need to
happened?
remember that Franchon Cruz has been boxing and competing since 2005. The woman
Okay.
can fight. She is a multiple USA boxing national champion. She has fought at an elite level all over the world. And when she finished her amateur career, she was 56-19 as an amateur. She has fought everybody. All right. Now, the only reason she ended up not getting her ticket punch for the Olympics is 2012 was this girl from out of Flint, Michigan called Clarissa Shields boomed into the scene and
Wow.
ended up taking the spot at middleweight. Because let me tell you, our girl Franchon Cruz was the was it. She was it. She was boxing at middleweight for a very long time. So that's number one. Number two, when we've seen her fight, we have seen her get lost in the morass that is her overhand right that kind of barrels over from, left field into right field all the way over. And
Right.
she'll start the fight throwing overhand rights, right? Like that's her lead punch at the beginning of the punch. For this fight, she realized with her team, she had to fight smart. She was fighting with a puncher. She was fighting with someone who has knockout power in the same way
Mhm.
that Savannah Marshall has knockout power. But as distinct from the Savannah Marshall fight, which she lost, she really had to regroup. She had to rethink, what am I doing in the ring? And one of the things that we have always seen of her really across her pro career as a loss of control. She gets emotional and she starts that overhand right and she starts pumping and pumping and pumping. Well, this time she came in with a plan. So I'm dealing with a tall girl. She's strong and she's a puncher. How am I going to stay out of her way? And what was the secret to her win? The jab.
Wow.
Franchon came in and jabbed and jabbed and jabbed and jabbed. She did not see an overhand right till the end of the fight.
When she tried to, did she try to knock
She
her out?
just, no, she fought a smart fight.
Okay.
And when she saw she was keeping Shay at distance with the jab, and then she'd come in and do infighting or grab her, doing veteran moves, and Shay could not figure out how to work around it. She tried adjusting, she adjusted a little bit in the later round to try to step back, but Franchon had that jab all night long and completely stymied Shay Green and won the fight.
So that's
And yes,
experience, right? She
the
brought her
that is
experience
experience. That
and
is a 56-19
right,
amateur
right, right.
career. That is really listening to her team saying, yeah, you're
Mhm.
right. I am a champion. I am an undisputed champion in this game. I, we forget her debut fight in the pros was with Clarissa Shields. And
Wow.
Clarissa to this day will say, nobody ever hit me harder than Franchon Cruz. So, you know, we get distracted by the hair. We get distracted by her singing. We get distracted by a lot of things about her. But the truth is, she's a straight out boxer
Yeah,
when she needs to be.
it's just been her style, I think, is just something very difficult for
Her
me to
st-
watch. Right. It's just hard.
it,
It's
it
always been
it
hard
has.
for
But
me
if
to
you
watch.
see this fight, you will see a much more disciplined, straight up 1-2, 1-2, jab, jab, right, and sticking to that, or running in, grabbing her opponent, pulling back a little, and like really good infighting. She's a good infighter. She knew what to do. She was
Right.
going to the, and it's not just she was jabbing to her head, she was jabbing to the body, she was hooking, she was, using the uppercut. You know, it's not only the flash of her overhand right.
Right.
He really did fight. And look, nothing to take away from Shay Green, who is a really good boxer, and we love her on our show. And her time will come, but she really did not expect a disciplined Franchon Cruz in the ring. And with her team, they just did not seem to be able to make the adjustments
Right.
to the infighting, to Franchon coming in and holding and dealing with getting out of the way, dealing with getting cornered. That's the other thing. Franchon Cruz was the ring general in this fight. You watch how she was moving across the ring, and she was in control of the center. And when you're controlling the center, you're controlling the fight. I don't care what somebody's bringing back at you. So between the discipline of really relying on the jab and taking control of the center of the ring, grabbing in when she saw that that Shay was going to come out really with something very powerful in the right, she basically neutered Shay Green's right.
Wow.
That's what you had to do in
That's a
that
good
fight, and
game
that's what
plan.
she did.
She
She
prepared
had
for
a
that fight.
serious game plan. She prepared. She's like, no, I lost to Savannah Marshall. She can, say a lot of reasons for that, but it's on her. She knew it was on her. And she's like, I got more in me. I'm a champion. I'm a prove it. I am
Right.
going to prove and demonstrate through my fists, through my game plan, that I am a champion.
Right.
And she is.
And
And
are they going to do a run back on that?
I
You
don't
think?
know what's up next. She now has the WC belt outright and at super middle, and she's got the interim WBA, which means she's next up. Savannah Marshall holds the IBF, the WBO, and the WBA. We'll see how that goes. What we'll see.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
where's the money,
Right.
who's putting the fight together. Savannah's boxer. This fight was MVP, but it was shown on DAZN. So you got all
Right.
of that to work out, and we don't really know what's happening with Savannah. She had an injury. We don't know when she's coming back. Is she going to need a tune-up in between? And I got to say that super middle division is really light right now. We're hoping that Alicia Napoleon comes back. She had a baby, but she's been back in the gym and really looking good in the gym. She was supposed to fight on a Boxing Insider card. She kind of pulled out because she wasn't ready yet, but hopefully she comes back into the mix, and a few other women at that weight to make it competitive. But we'll see what happens, and Franchon can always drop back down to middleweight if she needed to. I mean, just middle and super middle right now are real inactive. You've got Clarissa hasn't had a fight since the spring when she fought
Yeah.
Cornejo.
When is
There's
she going to
nothing going
fight?
on. Well, who's going to compete with her? And then you got this Alicia Baumgardner, please, going calling her out. I'll fight you at 147. Well, girl, fix your sample A and your sample B, and then talk about boxing.
All
I am
that
so
shit talking.
pissed off.
All
What
that
the
shit
hell is going
talking.
on here? And this is just inactivities. People need to be working,
Right.
but how are you going to work when the state of Michigan is completely walked away from
Dysfunctional.
their
Right.
responsibilities? So you got a woman who's sitting there at still is considered undisputed at super feather, and zero has happened since her A sample showed that she had positive for steroids. Now, if that's wrong, then all right. Then where's the investigation? Where is all of that? And
Exactly.
she's just busy running her mouth now. Well, why not? Nobody else is there, so let's listen to her, right?
Yep.
So lot of
I ag-
lot to happen. Lot needs to happen in those divisions.
That's right. Well, it has been an interesting year for women's boxing,
Yeah.
2023, to
It
say the least.
has.
I'm looking forward to 2024. Now,
Well, yeah,
yeah, exactly. Let's move on to this weekend's card, right? We had this weekend in Saudi Arabia, Day of Reckoning. The big boys were on the card. AJ,
yeah.
AJ won. Big Baby Miller. Mm, I don't know.
Oh, Big Baby Miller.
He looked
Well,
a
he
hot
got
mess.
exhausted. He
He
was a
looked
hot
a
mess.
hot
I'm
mess.
sorry, I don't even know how he was able to move at 333 pounds. He did, but then finally he just
He
ran
looked
out
a
of gas.
hot mess. But
He
Eddie,
ran out of gas.
right. Well, wait a minute. First of all, I appreciate you, Melissa, for live threading. If you guys not on threads, get on threads, because Melissa live threaded through Day of Reckoning. It was amazing. That was good work. I kept up with the fights because of your live threading. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, there were some good fights. I got a call out for me in terms of the best of the undercard, if you will, was Ajit Kabayel, who's the fighting out of Germany and made absolutely chopped down the tree that was Arslanbek Makhmudov from Russia,
Right.
by way of Canada. I mean, he completely slayed a giant with some beautiful boxing, beautiful game plan in terms of taking him down and out. So there was some really good boxing on that card. There was some bad boxing on that card. And
Wilder.
Eddie's going to go through it. Well, Wilder's another whole thing.
Ugh.
I'll leave all of that to Eddie, but I just want to call out for me the fighter that really that I hadn't ever seen box before, that kind of made me pay attention, was Ajit Kabayel. I really hope good things happen to him because he put on a fabulous performance. He showed what boxing's all about, a lot of heart, coming in with a game plan and sticking to it and being really serious about it. And I
Right.
was so glad that he had that platform. And I hope he really moves on from there. He was not the favorite. Everybody figured the big Russian guy was going to chop him down like Paul Bunyan, but that did not happen. And all kudos to Ajit Kabayel for putting on a great performance. And Junior Fa, he tried. Again, this is like undercard stuff.
Right.
You had Frank Sanchez, who whenever there's a Cuban fighter, especially a big guy, everybody thinks it's Teofilo Stevenson. He's gonna just beat everybody. And it's so hard to wear that as a Cuban fighter that it's like you're carrying your island on your shoulders, and
Exactly.
the expectation is you walk in the ring and you're going to win in the first round. Then some spectacular fashion. Well, he was slow. It took him a while to kind of get to where he needed to go, and I felt bad for the guy because he was trying to figure out Junior Fa, who was on a comeback trail of his own, and really kind of taking control of the fight in a way that was sort of startling and surprising. And everybody was like, well, what's going on with stuff? He's just he needs a little time to come into this. But I was thinking to myself, and he has the whole island on his shoulders going, what are you doing? You're a Cuban fighter. Of course you're going to win that. You're going to make mincemeat. And in the end, he did make mincemeat of fun, and took him out in the seventh round. In a really, it's like he woke up in the seventh round and said, okay, enough. Boom, 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 boom. And out he went. Um, so those are, in terms of the undercard, those were the two standouts for me that were kind of interesting. Philip Hergovich, had no business. Mark DeMori had no business in that fight card. It was embarrassing that he was in there at all. And it's amazing he lived after the beatdown he took in the first round. And and I'll leave the rest to Eddie. So that's just my little undercard takes. But I did have a lot of fun live tweeting it.
Right. That was a great job.
And especially, yeah, and pretty much got most of the cards. So it was fun.
Right on. Eddie, now I know you've got the complete rundown on this Day of Reckoning in Saudi Arabia. So let's hear your take on this, brother.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Because I'm
We can
doing
hear
this
you.
on.
We can hear
Good,
you.
okay. Just had a
You're good.
technical problem here. Anyway, this card, although unfortunately it had no women fighters on it, was about 8 hours long. It had 8 fights, four of which were reasonably competitive, and four of which were really not. And I'm going to sort of distill some of the major points from this whole marathon event. And I've been talking a lot about waiting for the heavyweights. There's been so much inaction, top fighters either not fighting or fighting easy showcase fights. Well, this one was almost like the quarterfinals of a legitimate heavyweight tournament. If you can imagine a tournament, a playoff, similar to what's done in a lot of professional sports or the NCAA, this was the equivalent of the quarterfinals. And the first thing that stands out was the last fight. Anthony Joshua defeating Otto Wallin, who retired after the fifth round. And I'll say this a little bit more cautiously and conditionally than either Eddie Hearn or Steve Bunce did. But yes, AJ is back. It's not just that he beat Wallin that virtually everybody expected him to. He was a big favorite in this. Joshua was more fluid than recently, more relaxed. He let his hands go. He wasn't tentative. He looked like, for the first time in several years, the old AJ. I expected him to beat up Wallin, but not in the way that he did that. Now, Wallin is arguably better than Joshua's last two opponents, Franklin and Hellenius, but in those fights, Joshua looked stiff, ponderous, tentative, overcautious. In this one, it was back to being the old AJ. And it was talked about, if you compare his performance in this fight to Usyk's performance against Dubois and Fury's performance against Ngannou in the last several months, this was the best of the three. That doesn't mean that I'd rate Joshua as the number one heavyweight in the world, but it raises a lot of very interesting questions, particularly as supposedly Fury and Usyk are going to be facing each other in February. The second point, Joseph Parker versus Deontay Wilder. Parker won a clear-cut, unanimous decision, almost a shutout. He kept his distance. He was disciplined. He controlled the pace. He was in the center of the ring. He repeatedly landed overhand rights and jabs to Wilder, who was not firing very much back at all. Wilder is 38 years old. He's been inactive after he got beat up twice by Fury. In the last 2+ years, he had one round of fighting. That's when he knocked out Hellenius in the first round. Wilder looked rusty, and really, he looked shot. I think that has to be said, that the inactivity plus the age plus getting beat up all those times had its effect. And I also think we have to point out that Wilder has been protected over the years by PBC and Heyman. Excuse me, just had to take a little drink of tea there. He could have fought Joshua years ago if he had gone to the zone. Instead, they bitched and moaned, and they stayed with Showtime and Fox Sports. PBC lost Fox Sports as it did every other network that they've been on. And now they've lost Showtime, which is closing down its entire sports program. So the slower, inactive Wilder is symptomatic of and the same as Heyman's declining PBC. Parker, on the other hand, fought 4 times this year. The first 3 fights were not against the top-level opponents, but he kept active. He kept sharp. And trainer Andy Lee, who also works with Tyson Fury, really developed a strategy that Parker stuck to, showed great ring IQ. Stay away from the right hand, land what you can, get in, get out, use your speed, use your ring IQ. And Wilder's never really been a particularly good boxer. He just relied on knocking guys out with that big right hand of his, and he couldn't get it in this fight. And it showed a decline when a couple of years ago, Wilder fought Luis Ortiz, who outboxed him until Wilder got that right hand in. Wilder couldn't do that anymore. And Wilder's doing a TV show now. In September, he was in Scotland shooting a TV show. So who knows what the future is for him, but he's pretty much out of the top picture, not just because he lost, but because of the way he lost. He was absolutely dreadful. Point number 3, Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller. Jarrell Big Baby Miller won the talking and lost the fight, being stopped for the first time in his career at the end of the 10th round. This was a 10-rounder. Daniel Dubois had been questioned about his heart, about getting confused in fights, about losing focus. This showed that he was able to solve a lot of that. He was the youngest fighter on this card. It's important to note he's 26. Everybody else was between ages 31 and 41. Miller is about 35. And Dubois is learning. He had those dreadful losses where he took a knee, his orbital bone was broken a couple of years ago against Joe Joyce, and against Usyk. In his last fight in August, he lost focus. He thought he had scored a knockdown with the body shot. It was ruled a low blow, is controversial. And Usyk was given a lot of time to recover. But the fact is, when the fight restarted, Dubois looked disheartened by the whole thing, and Usyk was able to recover and get a stoppage in there. This time showed that Dubois, in the middle rounds, he started to get tagged by the slower, obese Miller, but he didn't fold. He came back. And in the latter part of the fight, which a lot of people, including myself, incorrectly thought would be Miller's, it was Dubois, as the huge 333-pound Miller, who's actually slightly shorter than Dubois, gassed out and was just getting tagged, particularly to the body. And so Dubois landed first, the right hand over the top, and body, and all that paid dividends in the end. And he, in the 10th round, he was ahead on the scorecards. He could have just coasted. Instead, he closed the show with something like 8 seconds left. So Daniel Dubois, the young fighter, is back in the heavyweight title mix. Point number 4, which Melissa talked about, Ajit Kabayel versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. The first couple of rounds, the slow but powerful Makhmudov tried to stalk Kabayel, who moved to his right. They each landed some shots. Things started to change in round 3 when Kabayel started landing more. Makhmudov was too slow. In between rounds, he started moving his head. I don't know if he had a crick in his neck or something. He was shaking his neck. But from round 3 on to the end of the fight, in round 4, it was all Kabayel, the smaller fighter, but who was undefeated and is the European EBU champion. And this kind of shows you why, until now, most people had never heard of the 34-year-old Makhmudov. Makhmudov is the same age as Joshua and is undefeated, yet most people hadn't heard of him. Well, now we kind of know why. He's nowhere near the level of the top championship level fighters. So the round 4 body shots dropped Makhmudov 3 times. It was over. And a big victory for Kabayel, who now arguably is in or on the fringe of the top 10. Point number 5, while there were 4 competitive fights, 2 of them were upsets. Kabayel was not the favorite against the big Makhmudov, and Parker was not the favorite against Wilder. And that's a good card when you just don't have showcase fights and all the favorites win. That really adds to the drama. The other four fights earlier in the show went as planned. Frank Sanchez beating Junior Fa, Filip Hrgovic destroying Mark Demori, Jayo Pataya with a one-punch knockout against Ellis Zorro, again a real mismatch, and Dimitri Bivol was taken the distance by Lyndon Arthur, but dominated the fight. And again, that was a fight that was not considered close. Now, number 6, there were real international implications with this international card. The winners, the 8 winners came from 7 countries. 2 from the UK, 1 from New Zealand, 1 from Australia, 1 from Germany, 1 from Croatia, 1 from Cuba, and Bivol, who was born in Kyrgyzstan and is apparently still a citizen of Russia, although a lot of these guys live and train in the United States. But the United States went 0-2. Both the Americans lost, Wilder and Miller. The New York connection was also bad, 0-3. Miller was stopped. Wilder's fought many times in Brooklyn's Barclays Center, though of course he's from Alabama, but that's been really one of the centers where he's fought. He's managed by Shelley Finkel, a real New Yorker. And Wallin lives and trains in New York, although he's from Sweden. And his trainer, of course, is another New Yorker, Joey Gamache. And New York boxing is disappearing. It's not playing a major role internationally anymore on a card like this. And for the U.S., which at one point was considered the center of world boxing, has now at best slipped to number 3 in the world in terms of influence and where the cards are being held. Number 1, which I'm going to get to explain a little bit more, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Number 2, the United Kingdom. And this card was set up, went to like 2 or 3 in the morning in Saudi Arabia, but it was certainly not set up with the US TV audience in mind, where Eastern time is 8 hours ahead of Saudi time, and especially doing it on December 23rd, on the weekend of Christmas and on a Saturday afternoon and evening when a lot of people were busy with things. And so the U.S. is becoming less and less important because of all the crap that we've talked about that's been destroying boxing, protecting fighters, promoters not working together, conflicts between networks one after another dumping boxing and so forth, all of these. Number 7, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is now the most important destination for boxing in the world. We've seen them really moving in on other sports. They're trying to develop a modern economy with a medieval government, an absolute monarchy, and that's obviously creating a lot of contradictions. But they've been moving in on a major sport like golf with Live Golf. That's still being figured out what the relation is going to be, if any, between Live Golf and the PGA. But they've really disrupted things. So much so that Sports Business Journal, which annually puts out its list of most influential people in sports business, had as number 1 in the world, the most influential person in sports business, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, who's the governor of Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which has over $700 billion in assets and is investing a lot of that in world sport, boxing, golf, car racing, and many, many others. And they wrote that Yasser Al-Rumayyan of Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund exerted his influence on the American golf scene with global moves in soccer, which really means football to the rest of the world, combat sports, and motorsports, making him the most influential person in sports business for 2023. That's from Sports Business Journal, which put him on the cover of their magazine. And I would add, for boxing, The most influential person in boxing this year, 2023, is Turki Al Sheikh, who is a confidant of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, who runs the General Entertainment Authority, which is running the big Riyadh season, all these different events that are bringing in tourists from all around the world. And he was the one that got the money together to put this card, to put this mega card together, who had planned Fury and Ghana, although that ended up being a mess, that got Fury signed to fight Usyk. There'll apparently be another card in March with Joshua on it, although that's up in the air with Wilder's loss. And it's putting together all these fights that people have talked about for years and years and years. This is the guy, the number one person that set it up. And it's also my educated guess that what we just saw was Day of Reckoning 1, that there are going to be more of these events over the years, and they'll try to build on that. But they're spending a lot of money investing in this. And if they really want this at some point to bring in money, they have to do a couple of things differently. They need to develop their local promotion in Saudi Arabia for this to work. They were hawking tickets online to an 8,000 seat arena the day of the fight. From what I heard, the atmosphere was rather quiet, less so than you'd see in the UK or the US. And they're changing that arena all the time. What they had set up for this fight, they're taking all that down, and they're going to have a tennis match there. They need some permanent places, not building an arena specifically, making it purpose built for each event. They need to set these things up. The other thing is, which I could go into another time in more detail, internationally, they're still using the pay-per-view model, because even though this fight was cheaper in most countries and most of the pay-per-views, and a lot of people I found were ordering this thing who don't normally order these pay-per-views, it's still one of those situations where you narrow down what your audience is, and you build up generations of people that have never seen the top fighters or top boxing because they're priced out of it and it's not accessible. So that's just something to watch, even though in the US this is only $40 and a little cheaper around the world, but still the pay-per-view model is not something that's really good for a sport like boxing, which has such universal and international appeal.
Right.
Point number 8, this is a great show for boxing skills. You could particularly look at Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker, how they won their fights, not only that they did, but how they did it. And the two behemoths on the card, Jarrell Miller and Makhmudov, who were the biggest men, were both stopped by smaller men with good technical boxing, including effective work to the body, which you don't always see in the heavyweight division. So there's a lot to really unpack in terms of the technique on this card. Number 9, once again, do not announce fights before the ones that are already set are over. They had this in October where Fury was fighting the MMA guy Ngannou, and they said, oh, we'll have Fury and Usyk December 23rd, which is like a big, open secret. That didn't work out when Fury got cut and a black eye. Now, beforehand, even afterwards, Eddie Hearn admitted that they had signed Joshua and Wilder. They were just waiting for both of them to win. And now they can't have that because it's really not going to be marketable for Joshua to go straight to Wilder, since Wilder looks absolutely terrible. But there's a misconception that I've seen among certain people that are either haters or don't know shit about boxing is, why didn't they just have Joshua and Wilder fight now, fight on this card? Well, it's because of what I said. Joshua was not even scheduled to fight on December 23rd as of October 28th. This was supposed to be Usyk and Fury, and Joshua was going to fight early next year. when Fury got these injuries and they were committed to have a card as part of their Riyadh season events for December 23rd. They needed big main events. And it was just not enough time to put together to have the training and everything done for a fight the magnitude of Joshua versus Wilder, because people expected that to be more competitive. And frankly, beforehand, a lot of people would have picked Wilder to knock out Joshua. So you just couldn't rush into that with 5 or 6 weeks training. You need them, particularly since the last week is not serious training. It's media events and all these other type of things. In terms of what's next, now there are lots of choices. Eddie Hearn talked about Joshua possibly fighting Hrgovic, who's the #1 mandatory for the IBF. The reason they said that is that assuming that Fury actually does fight Usyk, whoever the winner would be probably is not going to hold the IBF title. They'll be undisputed for about 5 minutes because Fury might vacate that title. And if Usyk wins the fight and there's a contract for an immediate rematch, the IBF doesn't allow immediate rematches, and they're stripping all kinds of fighters. They stripped Opataya, they stripped Crawford, they're doing more stripping than you'll find in Las Vegas. So you could have a fight where Hrgovic is #1 in IBF, Joshua beat Violent, who was #2 in IBF, and that could be for the IBF belt, and Joshua wants to get another belt. So that's possible for March, but again, this is boxing, all sorts of nonsense going on. Number 10, DAZN, from what I read, once again had technical issues in the main event with Joshua and Violin. They lost sound. Viewers said they couldn't hear a thing. In some cases, the picture either was bad or went out, and DAZN had to publicly apologize to boxing fans around the world, and there were several articles written about that. People should demand a refund. This is the company that the promoters chose and Saudi Arabia chose to be the chief broadcaster, if you will, really streamer of this event internationally, and they couldn't handle it. Now, this wasn't in every country. DAZN sort of either, I guess it was either sub-licensing or working with TNT in the UK, which used to be BT Sport, which had their own video, and I don't think it was the audio was lost everywhere in the world. But DAZN just showed once again it's a company that's losing billions of dollars, and they couldn't handle this, which should have been really the biggest night of the year for them. So there's a real mess in terms of streaming, and again, people should demand a refund who paid for this fight. And they also, I will say, they also had ESPN Plus in the US showing basically the DAZN feed. But to order the DAZN pay-per-view or ESPN Plus pay-per-view, you had to subscribe to it. Not everybody knew that. So there were people that figured, oh, $40 for pay-per-view, that's not too bad. And they're going to find that they're stuck for over $200 a year with a yearly subscription to DAZN. And then I've seen numerous people writing online that, hey, this is in the past, I tried to cancel my subscription and was given a runaround and couldn't do so and was charged anyway and all sorts of this. So they really should think twice about what it means to be working with DAZN at this point, which I think is only can survive much longer if somebody buys them out or they merge with something or one
Let
of
the
these
Saudis
other
buy them
companies.
out. The Saudis can buy them out.
I couldn't hear you.
Big issue.
Right.
issues with
I was
DAZN.
saying, how come the Saudis just don't buy the DAZN? Why don't they just buy the broadcasting company?
Because they're not broadcasters and they're tied in with NBC, the Middle East Broadcasting Company, which is there. I'm not sure who showed the fight in Saudi Arabia, but they're not broadcasters. They decided what the Saudis did in this is they brought in what they felt were the best people to do this fight. They came up with the money. They
Right.
provided the venue. They don't have an athletic commission. They brought in the British Boxing Board of Control. They don't have
That's
drug
right.
testing for this show. WADA, according to Frank Warren, did all the drug testing, including of Miller, for all of the fighters. They brought in DAZN. They brought in all these different people from around the world to put this on. Maybe they're going to
Plus,
decide that
they
they
also
got to do
had
it themselves.
promoters. They also had promoters that don't normally work, play in the sandbox together. But you had Queensberry Promotions, which is Frank Warren. You had Matchroom Boxing. You had Dimitri Salita. You had DeBella Entertainment, and
Oh,
they have
wow.
been. I mean, this
Eye
was
of the Tiger, SES. You had all these different.
exactly. This
Miller
is
has
a
his own promotional. I think there were between 9 and 12 different promotional
yeah.
companies. You don't see
So
that
it's not
normally. So they're
exactly.
disrupting this whole structure of boxing. Some of it in a good way, but they still, when they bring in these existing schlub companies, they have all the problem.
And with the zone, I mean, I watched the feed the entire time, uh, and everything was fine until the Wilder fight, and I started to get glitchy video. And then and I in between I rebooted, I did a whole bunch of things, but it was glitchy coming out from them, and there were folks that were talking about it on Twitter. And then when the Joshua fight came on, that's when they lost audio. Now they also lost DAZN lost audio a few weeks ago. Same kind of thing for 2 or 3 rounds. So this is not the first time they've lost their control booth. Um, and they did have a Chiron that came on that said apologies for the audio issues, but it was out for 3 rounds.
Mm.
Which, considering how big a card this was, and the fact, I mean, to my mind, since the video started getting glitchy at the point of the Wilder fight, it meant that there were a whole slew of people that they were getting hit with performance issues, obviously, and their servers couldn't handle it. And then the audio issue was something else. And as I've said, they've had that once before during a big fight night during the main event. This was not the first time that happened. So I agree with you, Eddie. They've got a lot that they're going to have to do if they're going to continue to try to be such a major player and basically take over the role of an HBO or a Showtime in terms of putting together big time boxing cards. Otherwise, it either goes de facto to ESPN, or maybe Sky Sports jumps in and tries to take that away, and do that as the major partner for these kinds of broadcasts that go global.
Right. That would make sense. I mean, it's like seizing the opportunity. You see Showtime's gone, HBO is gone, ESPN is gone. Why not seize the opportunity to present at least a little bit of boxing, whatever's left?
Well, there's
Right,
nothing left here. I mean,
right,
we literally have DAZN has pretty much weekly shows. ESPN, I can't remember the last time. I
right.
mean, every few weeks, maybe. Women's boxing doesn't exist unless it's on DAZN, or the small markets, and you watch it on YouTube. I saw a fight out of Santo Domingo from the Dominican Republic on, they
You
have
watch
their
it
own
on
little
YouTube?
channel on YouTube. Yeah, Boxing Insider out of New York. So you got all these club fights because nobody else is putting on cards. And there's a lot of boxing in the USA. You would not know that otherwise, but there is. If you go on
Yeah,
BoxRec
local.
and you look at the
Right.
schedule,
Yeah.
all local. And it's all being shown locally or on YouTube or some, Ishkabibble streaming service that you never heard of. That's dodgy at best. Or you're there live. I mean, it's pathetic. And what it's doing to women's boxing is just destroying the sport as it finally has some opportunities. It's really, 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 really difficult right
Right.
now for boxing.
Sad state of affairs for the sport of boxing. Well,
Yeah, I mean, you got the zone doing the MVP fight, and they're doing Golden Boy in the U.S. and those have women.
right.
I mean, you had Amanda Serrano's fight, and she's going to have a big card in March, again with 3-minute rounds with Menke, the German fighter. It's a really good fight card. Franchon Cruz DAZN and Shea Green, that was on, an MVP card that was shown on DAZN.
Okay.
And as I said, Golden Boy Promotions typically has a women's bout on each of their cards, or if they miss one, they may have 2 or 3 on another card. And Eddie Hearn's British cards tend to have at least one women's fight.
Right.
Boxer has women's fights, but everybody else,
Yeah.
0. Nothing on Showtime, and now they're gone. They went out as they came in. No women's fights on their last card.
Right.
At least HBO, headlines Cecilia Brækhus on their last card. But,
Well, I
Stephen
hope
Espinoza, for all he always, clamored, I'll help women.
Stephen
Buh,
Espinoza was full
bull
of shit.
hockey,
Yeah, he was full
bull
of shit.
hockey.
That's the bottom line.
Nothing.
Right. And he
Nothing.
probably knew Showtime Boxing was on his way out. So why invest? I guess he figured, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this was the sale of the division, and
Right.
their new masters are Paramount, and they're not interested.
Well, they didn't have women because of Heyman.
They didn't have women
want to have-
exactly because of Heyman. Yep.
and they lost other promoters, and they
Wow.
signed this output deal with Heyman, and they kept more and more putting on their showcase fights, and their ratings went down, and they moved things to pay-per-view. Now they're going to be with Amazon Prime starting in the new year, and it's
Who?
probably mostly pay-per-views.
Who's going to be on Amazon Prime?
PBC.
That went through.
Oh, Lord.
Yes.
That went through.
Yes. Yes, they announced that.
All
but
4
that's
people are
mainly
going to
gonna be-
watch.
Well, a lot of people watch Amazon Prime because they have NFL games on.
Right. They do.
They have
Yeah,
other
no, that I
sports. They have
know.
Yankees on. They're developing more live sports, but the problem is it's going to be mainly pay-per-view. And it's
Come
going to
on
be
now.
Heyman doing the booking. And I don't know if there's anybody at Amazon who really knows boxing.
They don't.
So
Well,
they're
they
gonna-
don't, and yeah, they don't,
So
and they
put on
were
whatever
going to
shit they
do
give.
more boxing.
Mm.
I know this. There's a lot of attempts to get women's boxing documentaries and everything else out there, and it's been a very difficult relationship with Amazon
Right.
because they run hot and cold all the time, and you just don't know what's happening with them.
Well, that's a shame. Well,
Eddie, I mean, that's a terrible choice. If you're going to go with somebody to put on, oh man, that's
why
a terrible
PBC? I
choice.
would love to see Amazon Prime do boxing, but not with PBC.
That's a terrible choice.
That's yeah.
Who the hell do they even
that.
have?
Who knows about boxing at Amazon?
Well, nobody, but they should be partnering somebody other than PBC, somebody that can give them a full array of fighters that includes a female bouts.
They don't know. They're bringing in
Well, I'm
existing
gonna call.
things.
Let me call Jeff Bezos. I need to call somebody over there.
Look. They brought in the Thursday night NFL games, which are getting huge ratings, but that's the NFL. Okay, they brought in some local sports like the Yankees. They have 20-some live Yankees games exclusively during the season on Amazon Prime. That's the Yankees. Now, the Yankees had an awful season this past season, but still, it's the Yankees. So they have that name recognition and the expectation with they brought in the new guys is they're still the Yankees. They think PBC, they got sold a bill of goods.
Yeah, they did, and it's only I'm looking at it right now. It's only for their pay-per-view, and they want to, and
It's
they're
vague.
touting that
It's
they had
both.
David Benavidez, and they had Crawford and Spence in 2023, and it'll be more of the same. And they want to have their first event anticipated in March 24. Who the hell's going to be on that card?
No, good
So
Lord.
annoying. It's
Yeah,
just
for real, for real.
pathetic.
For real, for real. All right. Anything else we want to touch on before we say
Yeah, I got one other thing that I got to catch up on. It was about something I said a few weeks ago about the elections to world boxing, which of course has been overshadowed by everything going on in professional boxing and the difference of separate candidates. And I want to set the record straight about my view on the elections that took place for the president of world boxing. And I'll reiterate what I said, although I think I messed up the timeline because I was speaking off the top of my head and I should have documented it better. I think it was very good that world boxing had a real contested election, that they had a democratic election, and it wasn't mudslinging and the nonsense that we saw with Kremlov and his Russian-led IBA and all that. I think that's a good thing, but it also shows that there are different paths being taken by people within world boxing that have to be noted. Now, we go back to May of 2022, the IBA had elections for the president and a board of directors, and they elected Kremlov by acclamation for a second term. They also had elections for their board of directors, and Elise Signal of the United States got actually the most votes, 106 votes of all the members of the board of directors. But other members that were opposed to what Kremlov was doing were banned by Kremlov and his associates from running, which included Boris van der Vost of Netherlands, Mike McAtee of the U.S., Steve Hartley of New Zealand, and Per Axel Soholm, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, of Sweden. And they appealed. They were banned by this so-called Boxing Independent Integrity Unit for very minor infractions, and they appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. You could read their decisions, and the Court of Arbitration for Sport said that the infractions they made basically were very minor. They could have been given a warning or no sanction, a light sanction, but not exclusion from election. And they said that there should be, although they didn't order full elections, it should be another election. So IBA decided, okay, they're going to have another Congress. They were not going to have another election for board of directors, but they would for president, and the two candidates would be Kremlov and Boris van der Vost. So they held that in September, and instead of having an election, the majority of the national federations there voted not to have a rerun of the election. It was 106 to 36, with 4 abstaining, showing that the majority of these federations didn't even want to have formal democracy in there. And Kremlov was reinstated. Elise Signal was still on the board of directors of the IBA at this point. In December of 2022, USA Boxing and leaders from 20 other national federations participated in a general assembly to form World Boxing. And they hadn't left. It would be a little bit later till they actually left IBA. In February, the U.S. announced that they were withdrawing from the IBA's men's and women's world championships, and Kremlov, in typical Putinist fashion, called USA Boxing worse than hyenas and jackals. This is in February. This is what was going on with an IBA. In March 21, in New Delhi, there was an IBA Women in Sports Conference that a number of IBA leaders were at, including Elise Signal. In April of 2023, World Boxing was publicly introduced. And in May, Inside the Games put out an inaccurate report, which I mistakenly relied upon, about why Elise Signal resigned from the IBA board of directors. And what I should have done, there was an article that's posted on the Boxing, the Philippines boxing site, and also sent out as a press release that explains a number of things, but still have to be questioned. And it said that prior to, and I'm going to paraphrase this, prior to USA Boxing ending its 77-year membership with IBA, USA Boxing Board of Director Elise Signal resigned from her position as an independent director of the IBA Board of Directors. Elise did not make a public announcement because she did not want her professional and personal beliefs and values to be a distraction to both the then upcoming Men's World Championships. Now, USA Boxing had already withdrawn from these World Championships. I don't know why she felt the necessity to do that, but it was a much more conciliatory position. It was a different position than the others had changed. And they also said there was the looming potential decertification of IBA by the IOC for all the reasons that we know about and eventually took place. So this was announced, and they put out this correction to what they call the false claim on Inside the Games, which at that point was partially owned and now is completely owned by a company that's essentially controlled by Umar Kremlov. So just putting out propaganda that goes on.
Oh, my Lord.
So USA Boxing thanked her for her support of the membership and all of this. The next day after this came out, June 22nd, the IOC, as we know, expelled the IBA. November 25th, World Boxing holds its inaugural Congress. They hold a democratic election. Boris van der Vorst was elected the first president of World Boxing. As I said, a contested election. He secured 63% of the vote, and Elise Signal got the rest, and van der Vorst will serve a 2-year term. My point in raising this was that they took different paths, and that while van der Vorst, they wouldn't even let him run for election against Kremlov, she stayed to work inside of IBA. And she was asked by Steve Hartley this, what have you done since then? And she said she tried to be in to fight the good fight. Well, the others had already decided there was no way to do it. You were dealing with an authoritarian organization where the cards were stacked against you. So while I did make a mistake on the timeline, I did know there were different approaches. Now, this is not acrimonious. This is nothing like the differences between Kremlov and World Boxing, but still, it's different paths. And I hope that an amateur organization like World Boxing can understand there has to be independent media coverage to deal with these kinds of issues, and they should be upfront about it rather than presenting everything as you just kumbaya that's in there. But now they have a lot of work cut out for them, because by 2025, just a little over a year from now, the IOC will set in stone its program for LA 2028. And they have to be better organized, which I hope they are, get more national federations in, for the IOC to say, okay, we recognize World Boxing as the Olympic Boxing Federation, because otherwise it's likely that the IOC could say no boxing at LA 2028, which would set the whole sport back. So they have to find ways to improve. They have to find ways to work together. And as I said a zillion times before, I hope they do.
Well, we're pulling for the World Boxing, this organization, because I want to see Boris succeed. We need
Could you
something
speak up?
new. I said we want to see the World Boxing, this new World Boxing Council. What's it called? WBC?
No, that's the
W
professional. World Boxing, that's the name of the
It's
group.
just the World Boxing. Yeah, we'd like to see Boris succeed. So I hope they get it together over there in time for the LA Games. All right. So is that it? Is that it, Eddie?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to make that correction at the end.
All right. Well, thank you for clearing up the record. I hope the World Boxing, I hope they really get it together over there. We want to see them keep amateur boxing in the mix for the Olympics. All right, folks. It's been a long session today. Thank you all for showing up today. Melissa, you want to tell the people where they can find you?
Sure. I am at Girl Boxing Now on social media. That's Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, which I'm just doing continuing to do boxing because it seems to be the only game in town. My website is girlboxing.org, and I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and seeing us and supporting us, and wish you all just blessings this holiday season. Love, peace, and joy, and a
That's
fabulous
right.
2024.
Yeah, we're almost up to 300 subscribers. I cannot believe that. I looked at it today, yesterday. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank
All right,
you.
Eddie, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
I'm at eddiegoldman.com. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. Had a couple of hundred articles up on there. Did several previews of Day of Reckoning. This show will probably serve as the conclusion and analysis of Day of Reckoning. Social media, I'm still using Twitter. There's still a lot of discussion that's going on there. The thing is falling apart one after another. But right now, it's still you see the most discussion about boxing and a lot about world affairs and all sorts of other things. I'm trying to use Blue Sky, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. It seems to be kind of lame over there. But you can find me at NHB News on both those places, and subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. Support independent journalism. You got all kinds of junk, propaganda, nonsense that's out there. And I'm gonna give you the truth. I'm gonna give it to you straight. The good, the ugly, the bad, and everything in between. And that's it. And I won't be going down anybody's chimneys this year.
We want to keep you out of the chimneys, Eddie. Okay, no going down the chimneys. Well, look, folks, I want to thank you guys for tuning in and subscribing. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification button so you know the next time we drop a video. Threads is the #1 downloaded app right now, so I would suggest you guys jump on Threads. You can follow me on Threads and Instagram at FightGoddess1. I'm a little bit on Twitter. The boxing community, the largest boxing community, I should say, is on the Shitbird app, unfortunately. And so we're asking you guys to move on over to Threads or to Blue Sky. Join us over there because, I can't stand that Shitbird app. So until next time, my beautiful people, we will see you. Peace.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year in 2024, baby. We're going to make it happen again. We'll see you next time. Peace, love, and push-ups. Boom.